I'll sign. My own voice sounded steadier than I felt as I slid the pen across the last page. Across the courtroom, my father-in-law, Victor Dawson, leaned back in his chair with a satisfied smile. He didn't even try to hide it. "I told you she'd come around," he said to his attorney, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She finally knows her place." A few people lowered their eyes. Others simply watched. My attorney leaned toward me. "Claire, this is your last chance. If you sign, you're giving up the ranch, the company, almost every asset your husband left behind." "I know. You can still contest this." I looked at the papers one last time. Then I signed. Victor chuckled. "I suppose grief eventually gives way to reality." The clerk collected the documents. Victor folded his hands, already looking like a man who believed he'd won everything. But before the judge reached for the final order, I quietly placed a sealed envelope on my attorney's desk. He looked down at it, then back at me. "You've been carrying this the whole time." I gave a small nod. "Now," I whispered, "it's finally time." Before we continue, drop your city and country in the comments below. And if you enjoy revenge stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. 6 weeks earlier, I had buried my husband. I barely remembered the service. I remembered our children holding my hands. I remembered neighbors bringing casseroles we never ate. Most of all, I remembered Victor finding me before the flowers had even begun to wilt. He closed the door to my late husband's office inside the ranch house. "We need to discuss the future," he said. "My husband isn't even buried in my heart yet," I answered quietly. "The business can't wait." Neither could he. Without sitting down, Victor began listing everything he intended to take. The ranch, the company, the investment accounts, the equipment, the land. Then he looked directly at me. "You can keep the children." The words hit harder than the funeral had. "I helped build this place," I said. "You helped decorate the office and host dinners," he replied. "Don't confuse that with ownership." I wanted to argue. Instead, I watched him walk away, as though the conversation had already been decided. Over the following weeks, everyone assumed the same thing. Employees started reporting directly to Victor. Family friends congratulated him on keeping the business together. Even people who knew me avoided asking how I was holding up. They simply assumed I'd already lost. Only my attorney kept pushing. "We can fight this," he insisted during every meeting. Every time, I gave the same answer. "No." He thought grief had broken my judgment. He didn't know that every night, after putting the children to bed, I opened my desk drawer and looked at a sealed envelope addressed in my husband's handwriting. I never opened it. The instructions written across the front were painfully clear. "Do not open until the fight is finished." So I waited. And now, back inside the courtroom, Victor's attorney stood to finalize the judgment, while Victor smiled at everyone who would soon believe he'd won. Only one question remained. Why was I the only person in the room who wasn't worried? The drive home from my attorney's office was almost silent. Rain tapped against the windshield, while the children sat in the back seat. Neither of them asked about court. Neither of them had to. As we turned onto the long gravel road leading to the ranch, my 10-year-old son, Ethan, finally spoke. "Are we going to have to move?" I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "I don't know yet." My 8-year-old daughter, Lily, looked out the window toward the horse pasture. "What about Dad's horses?" "I'll always make sure they're cared for." "But by us?" I couldn't answer. When we reached the house, both children climbed out more slowly than usual. They walked toward the barn without another word. I watched them disappear through the old wooden doors, then sat alone in the driver's seat for another minute. For the first time since my husband died, the house felt too quiet. That evening, Ethan stood beside one of the older horses, brushing its coat exactly the way his father had taught him. He said horses remember kindness, Ethan murmured. They do. He also said this ranch belonged to our family. I swallowed. It does. He looked up. Then why is Grandpa taking it? Children have a way of asking the question adults avoid. I knelt beside him. Sometimes people believe they're entitled to things that aren't truly theirs. Are we going to stop him? I rested a hand on his shoulder. We're going to do exactly what your dad wanted. He frowned. You know what Dad wanted. I trust that I will. After the children fell asleep, I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. The sealed envelope was exactly where I'd left it. My husband's handwriting covered the front. For Claire. Beneath it, another line. Do not open until the fight is finished. Trust the timing. I traced the words with my finger. A memory surfaced. Just 3 weeks before the accident, we'd been sitting on the porch after dinner. He had stared across the fields, longer than usual. If something ever happens to me, he'd said quietly, don't assume the first battle is the important one. I laughed then. Why are we talking about something so morbid? Because people change after funerals. What do you mean? The people who love you won't. And the others. They'll show you exactly who they've always been. At the time, I thought he was simply tired. Now every word echoed differently. The next morning, my attorney, Daniel Brooks, spread another stack of documents across his conference table. I've reviewed this from every angle, he said. Victor's position isn't unbeatable. I know. Then why won't you challenge his ownership claims? Because that's not the fight. He rubbed his forehead. Claire, you're asking me to stand in court and let your father-in-law take nearly everything. I'm asking you to trust me. He searched my face. Is there something you're not telling me? I looked toward the window. There will be. When? When the fight is finished. Daniel leaned back in his chair, clearly frustrated. I hope you know exactly what you're doing. I stood to leave. With my hand on the office door, I finally looked back. No, I said softly. He's counting on me to fight the wrong battle. The ranch gates were already open when I arrived. That alone told me Victor had stopped asking for permission. A line of trucks sat near the main barn, engines still warm. Employees gathered in clusters, not working, just watching. And in the center of it all, Victor Dawson, standing like he owned the land beneath his boots. He raised his voice the moment he saw me. Claire, good, you're just in time. I stepped out of my car slowly. What is this? A transition meeting, he said smoothly. Nothing dramatic, just clarity for everyone. He turned to the workers. As of today, all operations report directly to me. A murmur moved through the crowd. Someone whispered my name. No one stepped forward to defend me. Victor continued, enjoying every second. Claire has decided to step back during this difficult time. My stomach tightened. I never said that. He smiled without looking at me. You didn't need to. That was the first real public lie. And no one challenged it. Inside the barn office, Victor had already rearranged the desk. My husband's tools were gone, replaced with Victor's briefcase. He gestured to a stack of documents. New contracts, updated authority filings, everything is being streamlined. My attorney, Daniel, arrived just as Victor finished speaking. He leaned toward me quietly. This is moving faster than expected. I didn't take my eyes off Victor. That was the plan. Daniel frowned. What plan? I didn't answer. Because Victor was watching us now. Later that afternoon, a longtime ranch accountant, Mrs. Harlow, approached me near the feed storage building. She looked over her shoulder before speaking. Something isn't right. What do you mean? She handed me a folder. These ownership transfers. The dates don't match what I remember filing. I opened it and saw it immediately. Signatures that looked almost right, but not quite. Adjustments buried inside older agreements. Subtle shifts in control percentages. Enough to raise questions. Not enough for certainty. This doesn't prove fraud, I said carefully. No, she agreed, but it proves something was changed after your husband signed them. That was the first crack. Small, but real. By evening, Victor had already escalated further. A formal announcement was posted across the ranch office. New executive leadership confirmed. Under his name. No mention of me. No mention of inheritance. Just removal. I watched employees read it in silence. Some avoided my eyes. Others looked relieved, as if uncertainty had finally ended. Daniel pulled me aside. You're letting him take control of perception. That becomes legal reality fast. I know. Then fight him. I shook my head. Not yet. He stared at me. Claire, this is getting worse every hour. I finally looked at him. Good. That night, Victor held a small gathering at the main house. He spoke like a man, already in charge of everything. I intend to preserve your jobs, he told the staff, as long as loyalty remains clear. It wasn't reassurance. It was a warning. One by one, people nodded. Accepted. Adapted. I stood near the edge of the room, unnoticed. Until Victor finally turned to me. You're very quiet tonight. I met his eyes. I'm observing. He smirked. Still grieving. No. That made him pause slightly. Then what are you doing here? I took a slow breath. Watching you make choices. His expression hardened just a fraction. Before he could respond, one of his assistants rushed in holding legal papers. Sir, this just came from court. Victor took them without hesitation. He scanned the first page. Then the second. His smile returned. Wider this time. Perfect, he said. Daniel stepped forward. What is it? Victor looked up. A sworn declaration confirming sole ownership of everything. He tapped the document. Now it's official. The room went still. And for the first time, I saw something shift behind his confidence. He thought the game was over. But I knew exactly what he had just done. Daniel was already reading before we left the ranch that night. The courthouse copy of Victor's sworn declaration was spread across his desk, highlighted in frantic strokes. This is stronger than I expected, he muttered. I stood by the window. It's exactly what we needed. He looked up sharply. That's not what you said before. I said wait. Daniel leaned forward. Claire, he just swore under oath that he owns everything outright. If there's even a small contradiction in historical filings, this becomes serious. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I opened my bag and placed the sealed envelope on his desk. Daniel froze. You still haven't opened this. No. Why? My voice stayed steady. Because my husband said not to. He stared at me like I had just admitted to gambling with everything we had. That instruction is about to cost you everything. I stepped closer. Or it's about to change everything. At the courthouse the next morning, Victor entered like a man arriving to collect what was already his. He didn't look at me. He looked past me, like I had already been erased. His attorney whispered something in his ear, but Victor just smiled. Confident. Relaxed. Certain. The judge began reviewing the filings. Daniel sat beside me, tense. This is your last chance, he whispered. I didn't move. Minutes passed. Then the judge paused. Longer than expected. He flipped back through pages. Again. And again. Victor leaned toward his attorney. What's happening? His attorney didn't answer. He was reading something else now. Something deeper in the file stack. Something that hadn't been expected. Then it happened. The door at the back of the courtroom opened. A clerk entered quickly, walked to the judge, and handed him a single sealed document. The room shifted instantly. Victor frowned. "What is that?" No one answered him. The judge opened it slowly. Silence stretched. Too long. Daniel's breathing changed beside me. "I think that's it," he whispered. The judge finally spoke. "This court has received a final instrument executed by the deceased, dated prior to his death, but contingent on posthumous legal triggers." Victor straightened. "That's irrelevant. I already own everything." The judge continued reading. His tone changed. Slightly. Deliberately. As outlined in this document, full ownership transfer was structured to activate only upon formal sworn assertion of exclusive control by any competing party. Victor's smile faded. Just slightly. "That doesn't make sense," he said immediately. "I am the rightful owner." The judge looked up. "You declared under oath that you are." A pause. The courtroom didn't move. Then the judge turned a page. "And in doing so, you activated the conditions of this instrument." Daniel's hand tightened beside mine. Victor's attorney suddenly stood. His face was pale. "Your Honor," he said quietly, voice breaking, "we need to stop right now." Victor turned sharply. "What are you talking about?" His attorney didn't look at him. He was still reading. Still realizing. And then he whispered something that made the entire room feel colder. "This isn't a defense anymore." He swallowed. "This is confirmation of transfer." Victor's expression finally cracked. "And for the first time since my husband died." He stopped looking certain. The courtroom did erupt. It collapsed into silence. Not the dramatic kind. No shouting. No chaos. Just the slow realization spreading through every person that the case they thought they understood had just changed shape completely. The judge held the document in both hands. "This instrument establishes a conditional trust structure," he continued, reading carefully, "executed by the deceased prior to death, with activation dependent upon any party declaring exclusive ownership of the estate assets under oath." Victor's voice cut through instantly. "That's manipulation. That's not law." But his tone had shifted. Less command. More disbelief. The judge didn't react to him. He kept reading. "Upon such declaration, all contested assets are automatically transferred into a protected family trust, with sole beneficiary designation assigned to the spouse and direct heirs." Daniel exhaled sharply beside me. Now it was real. Not theory. Not strategy. Execution. Victor turned toward his attorney. "You knew about this?" His attorney shook his head immediately. "I did not. This structure wasn't disclosed in any prior filings. This is layered post-activation law." Victor's hands tightened on the table. "That's impossible. I signed nothing transferring ownership away from me." The judge looked up again. "You did." A pause. "Your sworn declaration is the triggering mechanism." That was the moment the room changed direction. Not loudly. Not visibly. But completely. I finally stood. Slowly. Daniel glanced at me. "Claire." I didn't take my eyes off Victor. "I didn't win anything," I said quietly. Victor let out a short, humorless laugh. "You think this is justice?" I stepped forward just slightly. "No." That made him pause. "It's timing." For the first time, he looked uncertain. Not angry. Not confident. Uncertain. The judge continued the final order. "All assets previously under dispute are hereby transferred into the Dawson Family Trust. Effective immediately, operational control is reassigned under trustee authority." Victor pushed back from the table. This is theft. No, Daniel said quietly, finally speaking. It's documentation. Victor turned on him. You helped her plan this. Daniel shook his head. I didn't know. That made it worse for Victor. Because now there was no conspiracy to blame. Only consequences. Outside the courthouse doors later, the air felt different. Lighter. Not because anything was forgiven, but because something irreversible had finally finished happening. My children ran to me first. Ethan grabbed my hand. So, we're not leaving. I knelt down. No. Lily looked up. Did you win? I hesitated, then answered honestly. No. I brushed her hair back. Your father did. Weeks passed. Then months. The ranch didn't return to what it was. It evolved. Quietly. Without Victor's shadow over every decision. Investigations followed his sworn statements. His authority didn't just collapse legally. It collapsed publicly. People stopped asking what had happened. They started asking how it had been allowed to go on so long. Victor didn't get a dramatic downfall. No final speech. No final fight. Just absence. From meetings. From decisions. From the system that had once bent around him. The last time I heard about him, it wasn't in court. It was through Daniel. He agreed to a full withdrawal of all claims, he said. I nodded. That was always going to happen. That evening, I walked the ranch alone. The same fields. The same fences. But no longer under threat. No longer waiting to be taken. I stopped near the barn, where everything had started unraveling. And finally, I opened my husband's envelope. Inside was a single note. Short. Precise. As if he had expected this exact moment to arrive without him. I didn't cry when I read it. I didn't need to. Because everything it said had already been proven in court. And in life. Months later, I stood on the porch as my children ran through the yard. The ranch was loud again. Not with fear. With ownership. With memory. With continuity. Daniel visited less often now, but when he did, he never asked about Victor anymore. There was nothing left to ask. Only what came next. And as the sun dropped behind the fields my husband once loved more than anything, I understood something simple. He hadn't left me nothing. He had left me the moment everyone else revealed exactly who they were. And he had made sure I would still be standing when they did. The courtroom didn't give me my life back. It only confirmed I had never truly lost it.